Welcome to my channel, where the scariest stories come to life. Before we dive into today's chilling tale, make sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications, so you never miss a story. Now, let's get into the horror. This happened to my best friend around 2 years ago, whom I'll call Sarah for privacy reasons. We are both studying in the same city, but at different universities, so we live in different parts of the city. One day, while Sarah was studying for her exams, she realized there was no food in the fridge, so she decided to go out for a walk and do some grocery shopping. There was a fairly large and well-supplied supermarket close to her apartment complex, where she stopped to get some fruit, yogurt, and noodles. She spent around 15 minutes in the supermarket, only to be greeted by a complete stranger outside, who started making small talk with her. He acted as if they knew each other, although Sarah was sure she had never seen him before. Overall, Sarah is a very polite and tolerant person, but she's also cautious around strangers. She described the man as a short, overweight guy with a goatee and a wide, odd grin. In contrast, Sarah is tall and gives the impression of someone you wouldn't want to mess with. She noticed that his fingers were twitching while he spoke, a sign that he was nervous. The guy appeared to be at least 35 years old, while Sarah was 23 at the time. Right away, she knew something was off about him. First, he greeted her by saying he'd seen her in the area a few times, then he proceeded to ask her to join him for coffee at a nearby cafe. Sarah, caught off guard, politely declined, saying she wasn't interested. This made him mad, and he kept insisting she go with him. When she refused again, he angrily told her they would see each other again soon, calling her by her real name. She was absolutely stunned, wondering how on earth this creep had learned her real name. She had no idea who he was. He didn't seem like a university student at all, but looked more like a construction worker, judging by his clothes. A bunch of questions ran through her mind. Fearing she had been stalked, she threatened to call the police if he didn't leave her alone. It was clear she had no interest in him, but the story doesn't end there. After parting ways, Sarah noticed the man standing in the same spot for a moment before he got into his car, a dark-colored vehicle with tinted windows, and started following her for a few blocks. When Sarah realized this, she became even more frightened and decided to take some lesser-known routes to reach her apartment complex safely. The sun was beginning to set by this point, but after taking a few shortcuts, she made it home just before dark. However, she was left feeling paranoid, wondering if he knew where she lived. She never reported the incident to the police, though she vividly remembers his face and overall appearance. Fortunately, nothing has happened since, and she hasn't seen the man again. I truly hope it stays that way. My advice to everyone is to stay safe out there, because sadly, some people just can't take no for an answer. Occasionally, I go grocery shopping after work. I work a pretty standard 9-to-5 job, and that's the most convenient time for me to shop. One day, I needed a few things and was planning on cooking something for dinner, so I stopped at my local grocery store, the same one I typically go to. When I got there, it was really busy. The parking lot was full of cars, and when I got inside, there were quite a few people. It wasn't terrible, but this was a very common shopping time for other people like myself, who had just gotten off work. I made my way around the store, moving from aisle to aisle, picking up what I needed along the way. I spent maybe 20 minutes shopping in total. When I was done, I used the self-checkout to pay for everything. After that, I walked back to my car, put my groceries inside, and drove home. On my way home, I stopped at a gas station because I noticed my gas tank was down to a quarter full. That's when I realized I didn't have my wallet. I had used it at the grocery store because I'd paid with it, but now it wasn't in my pocket where I always keep it. I frantically searched my car, checking everywhere, up and down, in all of my bags, and in every possible place. But it simply wasn't there. This meant I must have left it at the grocery store. I remembered the scene at the self-checkout. It was busy, with people at every checkout station and a line of others waiting. But there were also employees standing nearby, so there was a chance that if someone had seen me drop it, it might have been turned into the lost and found. I decided to call the grocery store as I continued driving home. I figured I could at least drop off my groceries since I was only 2 minutes away from home. However, when I spoke with the grocery store, they told me that nobody had turned in a wallet, and there was none in the lost and found. I was disappointed to hear this and feared the worst, that someone had stolen it. When I arrived at my house, I grabbed my groceries and began walking to my doorstep. That's when I saw my wallet sitting right in the middle of my front step. I was shocked. I walked over, picked it up, and immediately checked inside. All of the cash, about $100, was gone, as was my credit card. However, my debit card and everything else were still there. I quickly logged into my banking app and canceled my credit card to prevent whoever had taken it from using it. I knew the cash was lost, but I was relieved to have my wallet back. Still, I couldn't help but wonder who had returned it. It was a complete mystery. How could they have known where I lived? My driver's license still had my old address on it, so they couldn't have gotten it from there, and I didn't have my current address anywhere in the wallet. The only explanation I could think of was that it might have been one of my neighbors or someone who knew where I lived. To this day, it remains a mystery. I work at a grocery store, mainly stocking shelves. This is something that happened a few months ago. Most of the time, I work evenings, and occasionally really late nights. I'm in college, so this schedule allows me to focus on school during the day. A few months ago, I'd been working there for about 3 weeks and had just gotten used to everything. The grocery store is fairly large, with a good number of employees. We hired this new guy, and the first time I noticed him, he came across as a total creep. He did pretty much the same job as me, but in a different section of the store. The first time I saw him, he was staring at me. He was short, pretty skinny, and had long, stringy blonde hair. I had just finished stocking an item and was heading to the back to get another when I noticed him standing at the end of the aisle, staring at me with wide eyes. As soon as I saw him, he disappeared behind the aisle. I decided to ignore it. However, similar incidents happened at least 3 or 4 more times over the next week. Whenever I saw the guy, he seemed to be staring at me or acting strangely. In general, he just seemed a bit off, but I tried not to let it bother me too much. We all have coworkers we might not get along with, but that shouldn't stop us from doing a good job. One particular night, I was stocking a shelf during a quiet shift. I spent about 30 minutes in this one aisle. At one point, I turned around and barely noticed the guy looking at me through the aisle from the other side. It was as if he had created an opening by pushing several products aside so he could stare at me. I only glanced at him for a moment before playing it off, but I felt seriously creeped out. How long had he been watching me, and why? I decided I would go over and casually start a conversation with him, hoping he could explain his strange behavior. After finishing my task, I walked over to the aisle where he was. As I approached, he didn't look at me or even in my direction. I got right next to him, and he still wasn't acknowledging me. I said, "Hi," and he looked at me before mumbling a quiet hi in return. I tried talking casually, asking how his day was going, but his responses were one-worded and very short. He didn't seem friendly at all. Actually, he seemed annoyed that I was talking to him. After about 30 seconds, I walked away, concluding that the guy was creepy and I had no interest in interacting with him again. I went to the back room to get another cart of items to stock. When I got there, I realized I needed to use the restroom first. There's a restroom for employees in the hallway at the back of the store. After using it and washing my hands, I went to leave, but the door wouldn't open. I had heard footsteps and noises outside, but the bathroom isn't soundproof, so I didn't think much of it at the time. I tried opening the door several times, but it wouldn't budge. Finally, I had to slam my body into the door with full force, and it finally opened. When it did, I saw that a shopping cart filled with heavy boxes had been pinned against the door. I had to knock it over just to get out. Immediately, I suspected who had done it. I looked around and didn't see anyone else in the back. I went straight to find the guy and asked him why he had done that, thinking maybe it was his idea of a joke. Sure enough, he was already staring in my direction when I found him. I walked right up to him and asked why he locked me in the bathroom. He denied it and then just walked away. That didn't change my mind, I knew it was him. After that, I got back to work, now stocking shelves at the far end of the store. I had about an hour left in my shift and wanted to finish my tasks. As I was working, I heard slow footsteps behind me. I glanced over my shoulder and saw the same guy. He was far back, but staring at me. He was really starting to get on my nerves, but I ignored it. A couple of minutes later, he was closer, creeping up on me slowly and quietly. I looked back again and saw him standing directly behind me, about 5 feet away. He wasn't hiding or anything, just standing there, expressionless. I immediately got up and literally ran out of the aisle. He remained standing there, still expressionless. I spent the rest of the night avoiding him, walking around the store, and looking over my shoulder every few seconds. Luckily, I didn't see him again that night, and I finished my shift soon after. I never saw him again after that. One day, another coworker asked if I had heard about Marty. I asked who Marty was, and when they described him, I realized it was the creepy guy. I was told he had been fired and also arrested for punching our boss and trying to choke him. I was both surprised and not surprised to hear that. I still wonder, though, if he had been planning to hurt me when he was sneaking up on me that night. Thanks for sticking around till the end. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to give the video a like and leave a comment with your thoughts. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a terrifying tale. See you in the next one.